Hi, I'm Lisa Singer. I am the Senior Director Event Programming at Media Post, and this is Brand Insider BTS, where I get to pull back the curtain on some of the most influential women marketers today. And with me is Joy Ogunneye, and she is, I want to get the title right, the Global Innovation and Brand Comms Lead for Aveeno Body at Kenvue. Hey, Joy.
Hi, Lisa. Pleasure
I'm
seeing you again.
It's so great to see you. I'm so glad we're able to do this. We were last in Santa Barbara, so for the CPG Summit, and now I get to find out that was when, although we hung out a good amount there, so we
Yeah.
had fun. I love doing that, but I love to just, kind of dig in a little deeper and find out more about Joy.
Oh, likewise, likewise. And it's such an honor to be here talking with you again, of course, and connecting. So thank you for the
Oh,
opportunity.
well, I appreciate it. Okay, so I always do my snooping, as I say. And in a LinkedIn article, I saw that while you were in college, you had sort of this light bulb moment. And you realized at that time, at that moment, that you really needed to have courage to challenge the status quo. So I want you to tell us about that moment.
Mm. Yeah, I love it. I love it. You do your research. So, a little bit about that experience for me. When I was in college, I worked behind the counter at a brand called Laura Mercier. And it was at Nordstrom's at the time, which I was so thrilled and excited to have the opportunity to be there. And while I was working there, my boss had told me that I couldn't use any other competitive foundation. I had to use Laura Mercier Foundation, but they didn't have a shade for me. So she told me that I needed to mix and match and figure something out. And I remember like being in that moment thinking, why do I have to figure this out? Right? Like why it was quite disappointing that I didn't feel I was catered to at the time. And so for me, that was at that moment, I remember asking her, and she says, well, that's a good question. I just can't help you, right? And so that was when that I had that light bulb moment that for me to actually make a change rather than being upset and being distraught, I needed to figure out how to actually make that change. So I remember telling myself that, okay, one day I'm going to make sure that I find myself on the decision-making aspect of the beauty industry so that I can ensure that I can actually affect change and no one would have to feel the same way I did in that moment. So that was a time that I knew that I had the ability to challenge the status quo, and that would require me to put some skin in the game. So yeah, that was the light bulb moment I had.
Well, I think that's amazing that you set out and, like this is a job, sure, just to make money when you're at school. But it gave you a direction. And I know, you initially you worked at Morgan Stanley, so you worked on the financial side, but you did eventually cross over to the beauty, like big time with L'Oreal and Avon and Coty and Revlon, and now here, of course, at Kenvue. So talk about, I see what inspired you, like what gave you that, push to want to make change. But talk about the trajectory of your career in terms of when you were graduating, because you did take a little bit, you went, financial, and then got back there. So can you walk us through that and what brought you, your path that brought you to where you are today?
Very good. Yeah, great question. So yes, you're right. After that, I had that light bulb moment. I was still in college, and when I graduated from college, you would think that I'll go right away into the beauty industry, but no, I didn't. I went into banking, right? I went to finance because basically I wanted to be able to impress my parents, right?
Mhm.
I just a little bit about me. I am ethnically Nigerian, even though I was born here in the US, but I'm ethnically Nigerian. And my parents, Nigerian parents, tend to have really high standards. You're either a doctor or lawyer, or we always say, or nobody, right? Like that idea that you can really shoot for the stars and be whoever you want to be and achieve whatever you want to be able to achieve. So once I graduated, I felt that pressure of, okay, I needed to be able to appease my parents and make them feel as though I went through a much more of a traditional path. And for me, the path that I felt I could do that with was finance. So I went, I remember Morgan Stanley too. The prestige of being at Morgan Stanley was something that, just being honest, I was attracted to. And I went into banking. And while I was there, I excelled through the ranks, was great at my job. But I remember after about 2 years, having that feeling that I wanted to be able to wake up in the morning and love what I do. And I felt that I was at a career impasse and I needed to figure something out. I needed to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. So, as I was doing a lot of soul searching, thinking through what I should do with my life, I remembered that light bulb moment when I was at Nordstrom's while I was at college. And then I felt, okay, if not now, then when? So, I decided to make that leap. I knew because I was in finance and I wanted to go into the beauty industry, I knew I had to go get my MBA because at least that was what I was told, right?
Yeah.
So I did the GMATs, and I also, having high standards, always wanting to achieve to the highest. I always had the dream too of going to an Ivy League school. So I knew that was a goal of mine. So I said, okay, beauty industry, Ivy League it is. And so went through the process, and I had the opportunity to go to Wharton. So that's UPenn, University of Pennsylvania. And while I was there, I knew I wanted beauty. I didn't know what career, what subject, where I should focus on. And I absolutely then discovered marketing. I fell in love with marketing. I had this amazing marketing professor called Professor Raju. And it was just thrilling to be able to discover that marketing was the perfect mix between analytical skills as well as creative skills, which I embody both. And I thought, okay, then this is the path that I need to follow, go into beauty through marketing. So while I was at Wharton, I interned at L'Oreal on the Lancome brand. And once I graduated, I then started my beauty career from Avon, and then I went to Coty, then I went to Revlon, and then I went to L'Oreal, and then I went to J&J. Then Kenvue was Johnson and Johnson. And then once I left, I went, did a small startup. I went to a small startup, and then I came back to Johnson and Johnson, and Johnson and Johnson consumer products now is Kenvue as we know it. So yes, that has been my passion, my joy, being in the beauty industry. I've been here for about 15 years since I left banking, and I've loved it ever since.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing. It's funny that because you were initially, because of your parents, you were sort of you what you felt like you needed to do, what, in order to please them. And then you kind of continued, like, so that must be your upbringing a little bit, like the fact that it had to be this Ivy League college, even though you were crossing over. So do you hold yourself to these higher expectations, I guess, or do you, or are you able now to sort of say, I don't need to do that anymore. Like, where are you in that road?
I love that. That's very insightful. But yes, I would say you're right. Growing up, we had that high expectation. And it's funny you say that because I feel like the other day I was actually having this epiphany where I was kind of thinking through, oh, where did this come from, right? Like this quest for to be able to be a high achiever. I classify myself as a high achiever, as you said. And I remember for me growing up, and it's also could also be a cultural thing too, where you come with your report card, where we would have report, because I also grew up in Nigeria. You'll have your report card, and let's say you're third in class, and you come up with your parents and you show them your report card. And what they say, at least my dad would say, the person who came first, do they have two heads? And in a way, like growing up, I used to, after a while, started thinking, wow, you would think as though that was a bad thing, right? And I remember I had a phase where I looked back and I thought, well, that was horrible. Like, why would you say that to me? And now that I'm older, right? And now that I can see, yes, I agree. I've discovered or I've learned how not to be be a perfectionist, right? To know that it's all about progress. It's really not about perfection. So that's one thing that I hold to, where as long as you're progressing, that's really all that matters. And as a result, even tell my kids where yes, you shoot for the stars, right? But if you don't get to the stars, that's okay too. It's all about balance. And I think it's with everything. How do you balance knowing that you have the ability, you have the capability of doing beyond your wildest dreams, but you should also give yourself grace that it's really all about progress. So for me, it's about finding that happy medium, that balance, that I continue to aspire to. So I wouldn't coin myself as a perfectionist, but I wouldn't coin myself as someone who has low standards either. So it's
Yeah.
just finding that middle ground. Yeah.
No, and it comes across. I mean, I want to talk about, because again, with my snooping, and your Instagram. Now, I know you had mentioned this when we were in Santa Barbara, that you have your podcast, and it's called Happy Go Joy Podcast. Okay. And I love that because, and if you anyone looks at her site and LinkedIn, Instagram, it's all about she's the most happiest person in the world, like this. And she truly is. Like, Joy, meeting you at CPG, it was amazing. You are always this so happy. You brought joy to people. Everyone sort of felt that. And I love that you do this with your podcast. So I completely, your name is very appropriate. So,
Lisa.
but on your Instagram page, you have different pictures and you sort of put little captions under them. And my assumption is that this is maybe things that you in your podcast wanted to have people think about and do and that kind of thing. So you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that was what I was thinking. But whatever, even if I am wrong, I'm thinking this way and I'm turning these captions on you. So,
Oh boy.
so one of your captions was, "What are you tired of? Dot, dot, dot." Joy, what are you tired of?
Mm, Doubting.
Doubting.
Doubting. Yes.
Doubting others, doubting, or you doubting yourself, or doubting.
Doubting myself.
Yeah. Now, so is that the perfectionist creeping into you, creeping back?
Yes, yes. And exactly. And I think it's what I've also discovered. It never really goes away. It's all about when it comes or it creeps its little head. What do you say to it, right? Like what is the self-talk? Because a lot of times either way, however you like it or not, we talk to ourselves all the time, right? So it's really around how do you take control and what do you say to yourself to counteract whatever doubters are in your head at the moment?
Got it. Okay. Next one. Unpopular opinion, dot, dot, dot. Why we need dream killer.
Mm.
I'm asking you. That is, I would think, an unpopular opinion. So you tell me why.
I would say for to just make us better, right? To make us better. Um, and I learned this, like I remember working for a company, wouldn't disclose what company, and that was kind of where I learned really like high standards, right? Where you write, I remember writing about maybe 100 concepts, and all I kept on hearing was, "This is crap, this is not great, this is not great," and you hear that. And then, of course, in the moment, then I used to be so distraught, right? Thinking, well, I worked so hard. Why isn't this good enough? And with time, and as I've progressed in my career and in my life, I've realized that yes, it wasn't easy for me to hear. And yes, I probably wouldn't have said it that way. But there's always something to learn. Like, how could I be better? How could I make it better? There's always room for improvement with whatever you think. So for me, it's just being able to switch that, something that should be negative. How do I use that for my own good, right? How do I ensure that I'm still taking the feedback? Now, I might throw the things that I don't agree with, but how do I still extrapolate goodness from something that is negative, as such as a dream killer? So rather than seeing it as a killer, I see that dream killer as a propeller, right? That dream killer is going to propel me to actually get to my dream, even if it wasn't their intention.
Right. So it's not about killing the dream. It's good. We want
Yes.
the dream, and
Yes.
it's more like maiming it a bit, like, or like just sort of where you have to stitch it up and figure out where it goes next, kind of thing.
Exactly. And sometimes you hear that, and it maybe just even propels you to know, wow, that's definitely, I'm going to keep on trying and keep on pursuing that. And I don't know whether I shared this story even on then, but it actually, I remember this was when then I was working banking, and when I told you I was trying to get into the Ivy League school that I really wanted to get into. And I remember taking my GMAT for the first time, which is the exam you have to take. And I failed the GMAT woefully the first time. And I was told then that, well, you always have to make sure if you fail it the first time, you cannot get into an Ivy League school because they see your results, right? That was what I was told. But I know this was a dream of mine and I really want to be able to achieve it. So I remember being sad, cried, did all the things, maybe for a day or two. And then I was like, okay, I need to get back on the horse and I need to go and retake that exam. So what would I do? Need to study more, need to do what I need to do to take that exam again.
So
And so
you
I
kept,
took the exam again. And I would say, well, the score was, I thought it was average, right? Like I said, I thought it was average, but I was determined I would get in, right? Like this was a dream of mine. And I was waiting to hear back from the school, which I really wanted to go to Wharton. Then my fiance was living in Philly, so I thought, okay, definitely, this is the school I wanted to go to. So that was a dream of mine, and I hadn't heard back from them yet. So I was doubtful in a way, right? There was a little doubt as to whether I would get in or not. And I remember someone at work, and I didn't tell people at work what I was doing. I would just wait after everybody has left for the day. Then that's when I study and I do all those things. So I didn't tell anyone. And I remember having this encounter. I was at the pantry, and then a coworker of mine came up and we were chatting. And then we started chatting, and I then told him, I was like, oh, I'm trying to get into Wharton, right? And he says, wow, that's great. That's great. And so another coworker of mine heard that. And he then came up to me and said, you're trying to get into Wharton? Why do you think you'll get into Wharton? There are VPs here who have been trying to get into an Ivy League school and they haven't. Why do you think you'll get into Wharton? I remember, Lisa, then in that moment thinking, wow, like this is crazy. I don't think I'm good. I'm good enough. You have all that doubt. And then I regurgitated what he told me. And that only made me even want to get in there more, right? Like it propelled me to know now this is my dream. And so later on, fast forward a few days later, I was talking to my uncle, and same thing, I was telling him about how I'm just waiting to hear back from Wharton. And I remember he asked me, he says, what if you don't get in? Maybe you can go, to another school. And I told him, if I don't get in, I'll try again. And I'll try again until I get in. And I remember being, of course, my uncle didn't want to me to be upset because, hey, this is your second time trying to get in here. What if you don't? And I remember saying, I'm going to try again and I'll keep on trying until I get in. So that story is just to say how the so-called dream killers just only propelled me to know that that was the dream that I needed to be fulfilled.
yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think it pushes you more, and as you said, you sort of said in the beginning, it's not a dream killer. It's just someone making you take a step back because, we can go at things thinking we're doing this the right way.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes another person, and no, they don't have to maybe smack us with it, but letting us know you need to redirect or or try harder, like that. If it's going to push you, sometimes that's what we need. Someone to make us mad enough to say, we're going to do this. So but I love that you did continue to move forward and push yourself that way, as opposed to many might have just said, okay, I'll do this, or I'll pivot again and do something else. So obviously that's something in you that has been since, as you talked about, from you
Yeah.
in college, and it continues, and it's just growing as your career and as you as a person grow. So I think that's awesome. So it's very much a part of you, Joy. All right. I have one final question that's your question really, but for you. Um, you wrote, as you know, for your podcast, helping, in quote, you put helping ambitious people live joyfully no matter what. Okay. How do you do that? I mean, that's just, how do you make yourself live joy? It's a great thing to wake up and be like, I'm going to be happy today. And then the bus goes by and water splashes on you, or you miss this or whatever. Like, how do you make yourself live joyfully?
So I would say which I always like understand, life is cyclical. That's like bottom line, right? There's seasons. And I always say this, you have like seasons, summer, winter, right? I did say that. Summer, winter, spring, and fall, right? I got that right. And
Got
they're
it.
all seasons, right? And sometimes we think, well, right now we're in winter. Here, I'm in Jersey right now. It's cold, right? You think, oh, this is so drab. I just want to be, I just want to cocoon. I just want to be at home and do nothing. But the reality is life still goes on. So it's even despite the seasons, how do you still find the ability to see light no matter what? How do you find the ability to see joy no matter what? And it's not, I think sometimes there's a misconception that it means you're happy-go-lucky and you're not realistic and but it's yes, being realistic that crap happens. But even
Right.
in this crap that's happening, how can I see the light? How can I move forward? Because being in this mess does not help me move forward. And for me, I'm all about action, action, action. Like there's no point sobbing around and doing nothing, but it's in this, how do I transform this mess into a message, right? How do I still find this? If it's a rejection, how do I find this as the way that I move forward and I move ahead? So for me, it's all about finding the light in the darkness and finding the nuggets in whatever situation you find yourself. And I feel a lot of times that hinders us from, especially ambitious people, right, for moving ahead. So my what I want to be able to do, right, and which I try to do in my everyday with the interactions I have with people, even when people tend to come to me and we just talk, right? And I would advise and I would give my point of view. And as long as I can inspire and uplift you while you're down and lift you just a little bit up, then I feel I've fulfilled my why. So it's just the little things. It sounds really grand, but it's as little as going to the post office and seeing the person behind the counter and just smiling.
Yeah.
It's as
No,
little as that. And we don't realize how the little things we do can transform somebody's life, can transform the trajectory of where they were. Like the ripple effect, right? How do you ensure that in whatever interaction you have, you can at least bring some sort of hope, some sort of light, some sort of levity, right, in that situation to just help just a little, but you'll be shocked and surprised to see how a little truly goes a long way. So
yeah.
do that
No,
now.
I completely agree. And it makes putting it into context that way, it makes complete sense. It's not about being happy every day of every minute of your life. Let's say, put it that way. But it's finding, I love that you see the light because I feel like I definitely see, I like to get a plan and think, okay, it's going to work out. Like I try to keep that mindset because otherwise you're just going to, how do you move? If you don't really feel that way. And I totally agree. Just that little smile, walking down the street saying hi, or, giving that extra whatever. And I admit I'm guilty of not sometimes. I'll put my head down and when I walk, I do say hi to people probably don't even want me to, but like, I admit, like, I'm not when in a grocery store and someone's like, hey, how are you? I'm like, good. Like, like I don't really want to get into it. So I want to remind myself. I think that you do that you remind yourself of that. I think we all need to do that.
Yes, completely.
Yeah. Well, I love that. Well, okay. So we know how, I mean, as I said, I'm not just saying this. You are such a happy person. You have a light to you. But is there something, so when someone meets you for the first time, is there maybe something that they get wrong about you?
Hmm. They think I'm always nice. So because I'm always, because I'm joyful and all that, I think the assumption a lot of times is, oh, she's always nice. But
Mhm.
I always say I don't aspire to be nice, I aspire to be kind. Like as long as I can do things, and kindness for me doesn't mean I can't be honest. Like I'm brutally honest. Um, and so sometimes I think that could be a shock to people because they think, well, but that wasn't, that's not really nice. No, I feel it's my to if you it's kind of me to tell you, right? To tell you versus trying to be nice. And the way I coin them and I see them, I see how they're different because I think sometimes we think niceness is kindness. I always say it's and as little as you see someone with lipstick on their teeth.
Yeah.
The nice thing to do will be to say nothing because you don't want to hurt their feelings. The kind thing to do will be to say something and say you have lipstick on your teeth,
Yeah.
right? And I always go in a room saying, I want people to tell me that I have lipstick, I have food, right? My
Mhm.
my skirt is up. Like, please tell me. Don't
Yes.
try to spare my feelings. I'll rather know than for you to keep it to yourself because you're trying to be nice.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. I am the person who will say if you have lipstick or something, especially especially because, doing interviews for people, I'm always like, okay, I go up to more people with my little blotch thing. All right, you're shiny. I'm going to get rid of this or whatever. So I completely agree with that. I think it's sometimes though harder, like you said, people tend to come to you to, for advice or whatnot. And they, as you said, maybe they're thinking you're so always nice.
Yeah,
And so they're looking for, because sometimes people want advice or they want to hear what they want to hear as opposed to what they need to hear.
I agree. I agree.
But you want to say, I'm being kinder to you because even though you're not liking what I might be saying right now, and ultimately that's going to benefit them the most, really. But it is hard sometimes. Like, is it hard for you sometimes to do that?
Yes, that's actually a good question. I don't know whether I learned this technique, but being able to ask when I know I'm going to really be brutally honest, do you want me to tell you the real? Or do you want to tell you, do you know what I mean? Like, what would you, I kind of ask for permission. I
Yeah.
ask them for permission. Like, do you want me to tell you the real? And I think that helps to disarm, right? Disarm people because automatically everybody wants to know the real. I think some people do, but I do ask. And sometimes I will have friends who say, yeah, just tell me what I want to hear. And a lot of times sometimes I'll say, actually, a lot of times I'll say, I'm not that kind of person, so go to somebody else. And
Yeah.
I'll say it, right? Yes, it might seem like I'm joking, but I'm actually serious, right? Where come to me because you really want to know the real. And if you don't, and that's okay, right? Because I feel I will be inauthentic if I faked it for you. Like I don't believe in being fake. I believe in being honest with you. So yeah, I do that, the technique of asking for permission
Well,
before.
I think though, if I were coming to you guys and you asked me, well, do you want I open my heart to you and tell you this, and then you're like, well, do you want the real? I'd be like, well, yes, I have to get it now because I know there's something else. Like anything you said, if I said no, and then you said, oh, I think you're on the right path, Lisa. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not true because that's nice.
Yeah, and you're right. Like I don't think most of the times when I ask, do you want the real, most people say, I want the, because I can't actually remember anyone who says I don't.
Yeah.
But it also helps to disarm them knowing that because I've already asked them for permission and I've told them the real, they cannot now be offended because they
Yes.
allowed the real to be blurted out. Right?
That
So
is,
now I kind of put the ball in their court, right? And then they kind of have that responsibility to know that, okay, I just have to take it because I asked for it.
yes. I think actually that's good advice. I remember I gave the real to a woman who was having it was boyfriend issues. And and I'd heard a lot, and I listened a lot. And when finally I was just like, gave her the real, and she never asked me about it again. So I should have asked permission before giving her the real because she didn't want to know. So I should have talked to you before that had happened. I would have done better.
And sometimes we don't want to know. Like sometimes I've had friends who've said, I right now, I know what I should do, but that's not what I want to hear. I'm like, that's okay. And a lot of times what I do is I give that space to be able to say, I'm here, blurt out, speak out, I'll be quiet, I'll be silent. I just want to be that platform for you to feel safe to share what you want to share without any advice. And sometimes that's all people need. Like we don't always have to give advice. We just have to ask them what they need and help them with what they
Yeah.
need.
I agree. And I am sometimes guilty of that. It's like, and I think men are very much guilty. They want to fix it. But I feel like when someone comes to me to talk and I have to remind myself sometimes just listen because I want to fix it. If they're sad or they're scared or concerned, whatever it is, I want to, and people do tend to come to me for advice. So I'm used, then I want to offer it up. But I think there are times when maybe you don't. You just sit and, as you said, listen. And I have been trying to remind myself of that more so because I do think it's something you kind of learn because it's just, I think, instinct to want to help, for women, I believe. So, all right, changing gears, guilty pleasure.
Mm. Popcorn and peanut M&Ms.
Okay.
I know. So this I learned from my godparents, lived in Baltimore. And I remember because when I came back, because as I said, I had my formative years in Nigeria. And then when I came back to America, I lived with them. And every time we would go to the movies, it was just something that my godmother would do. Like she would order hot popcorn and then order peanut butter, yeah, peanut butter M&Ms, right? Peanut butter or yes, the peanut
Uh,
butter and then
peanut
when
M,
you put it on,
not
yes,
peanut
peanut
butter,
M&Ms. Yeah, exactly. You put it on there, and it when it's melted, it's so good. Then I thought it was gross. Now it's a guilty pleasure of mine, so I indulge in that whenever I can.
I have, mine, smart food and milk duds. So kind of the same.
Wow!
I
Sounds
don't eat them. I eat one after, like I like some popcorn and then I have milk duds, and it's so good. I love it. No, I don't need any fancy chocolates, just my milk duds and my smart food.
I love it. I love it. Very practical. Love it.
Okay. Last question. What is something small about you, perhaps even inconsequential, that most people don't know?
I Let me see. I am a trained sleep coach.
What is a trace?
What is it exactly? What is a sleep coach?
I'm trying to envision it. So you tell me.
I agree. So, I help little, at least I used to, but I'm trained to do that. Help little ones how to sleep, like help them sleep independently. So I started doing that when my son, my little one, my second child, was 5 months. So I trained him. Right now, he's 5 years old. So since he was 5 months, he's been sleeping through the night with no issues whatsoever. So I then learned how to do that professionally. And so it's a skill that I have. So people who have issues with putting their little ones to sleep, I have that skill.
I think that's amazing. It's like the baby whisperer or something. You know what I mean? Like it's just, I mean, if they try and they want to get up, like, do you just chat with them? Do you like do you sing to them? Like what do you do?
What I do, I would say that a huge part is creating structure. So I would always say, like, just creating structure for the kids. And a huge part of parents wanting to help their kids know how or help them know how to sleep is there's I feel there's like an underlying guilt in terms of no one wants to hear their kid cry, their baby cry, because at least that's when I talk to most parents. And I always say, at least to start off, of course the intent is not for them to cry, but I always start off where, first of all, crying is not, it's not a sin to cry, right? When the baby was born, what was the first thing we wanted every baby to do? Every time a baby is born, what's the first thing we look for as a sign of health?
Oh, cry. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So as soon as they left the hospital and they came home, then what changed? Like, why then do we then see this as a bad thing? Because a lot of times that's what's actually stopping parents from helping their little ones know how to sleep, like to train them to sleep. Because then it becomes because of you're so scared of them crying, you now become the crutch, right? They can't sleep without you rocking them to sleep, all that. So it's really about how do you empower your kids to know that they have the ability to do that. So I always say it ends up, which I absolutely love doing, I end up kind of being a life coach to the parents because it's all about training them and training their mindset and changing the way they're thinking about their child versus seeing it as an empowering task, like empowering skill to help them learn and empowering the kid and knowing that the kid has the ability to do that. So that's one thing that it's a mindset switch, and which is working with the parents to change that mindset to help the little ones.
Well, that explains. At first, I'm envisioning like, a 40-year-old person. I need help, Joy. How do I go to sleep? Whatever. That was a little different. So now that you put it into perspective for me,
Yeah,
that makes sense. And
exactly,
yeah.
exactly,
And I love that you put it. It's just like with, dogs, like it's when you go to a trainer, they're training the person, they're not training the dog.
exactly. It's actually the parents. Exactly. It's the parents I'm training and not necessarily, you're right.
The
You're not
dog.
necessarily the kid because the kid got it. So,
Here's a little treat for you. All right. Well, Joy, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing all this.
Thank you. Pleasure is all mine. Thank you. Really, it was such a delightful conversation and
Oh,
looking forward to having more, much more.
I'm glad, and you are a delight. So, and thank you for watching. And as I always say, if you have someone, know a woman marketer that you want to find out more about, or maybe you just don't know her, but you know of her, let me know, and I will do my best to get her and pull back the curtain on her. Okay, again, thank you for watching, and Joy, thanks again.